The Deadly Sins slash Sloth, Nearer My Couch to Thee by Thomas Pynchon. Published June 6th, 1993, sourced from the New York Times archive on the web. In his classical discussion of the subject in the Summa Theologica, Aquinas termed sloth or acedia one of the seven capital sins. He said he was using capital to mean primary, or at the head of, because such sins gave rise to others. But there was an additional and darker sense resonating luridly just beneath, and not hurting the power of his argument. For the word also meant deserving of capital punishment, hence the equivalent term mortal, as well as the punchier English deadly. But come on, isn't that kind of extreme death for something as lightweight as sloth? Sitting there on some medieval death row going, so, look, no offense, but what'd they pop you for anyway? The usual story. They came around at the wrong time of day. I end up taking out about half of some sheriff's unit with my 2 cubic crossbow, firing 3/4 inch bolts on auto feed. Anger, I guess. How about you? Well, it wasn't anger. Ha! One of these sloth cases, right? In fact, it wasn't even me. Never is, slugger. Say, it's almost time for lunch. You wouldn't happen to be a writer by any chance? Writers, of course, are considered the mavens of sloth. They are approached all the time on the subject, not only for free advice, but also to speak at sloth symposia, head up sloth task forces, testify as expert witnesses at sloth hearings. The stereotype arises in part from our conspicuous presence in jobs where pay is by the word and deadlines are tight and final. We are presumed to know from piecework and the convertibility of time and money. In addition, there is all the glamorous folklore surrounding writer's block, an affliction known sometimes to resolve itself dramatically and without warning, much like constipation, and hence finding wide sympathy among readers. Writer's block, however, is a trip to the theme park of your choice alongside the mortal sin that produces it. Like each of the other six, sloth was supposed to be the progenitor of a whole family of lesser or venial sins. Among them, idleness, drowsiness, restlessness of body, instability, and loquacity. Acedia, in Latin, means sorrow, deliberately self directed, turned away from God, a loss of spiritual determination that then feeds back on into the process soon enough, producing what are currently known as guilt and depression, eventually pushing us to where we will do anything in the way of venial sin and bad judgment to avoid the discomfort. But sloth's offspring, though bad, to paraphrase the Shangri-Las, are not always evil. For example, what Aquinas terms uneasiness of mind, or rushing after various things without rhyme or reason, which, if it pertains to the imaginative power, is called curiosity. It's, of course, precisely in such episodes of mental traveling that writers are known to do good work, sometimes even their best, solving formal problems, getting advice from beyond, having hypnagogic adventures that with luck can be recovered later on. Idle dreaming is often the essence of what we do. We sell our dreams. So real money actually proceeds from sloth, although this transformation is said to be even more amazing elsewhere in the entertainment sector, where idle exercises and poolside loquacity have not infrequently generated tens of millions of dollars in revenue. As a topic for fiction, sloth over the next few centuries after Aquinas had a few big successes, notably Hamlet. But not until arriving on the shores of America did it take the next important step in its evolution. Between Franklin's hectic aphorist, Poor Richard, and Melville's doomed scrivener, Bartleby, lies about a century of early America consolidating itself as a Christian capitalist state, even as Acedia was in the last stages of its shift over from a spiritual to a secular condition. Philadelphia, by Franklin's time, answered less and less to the religious vision that William Penn had started off with. The city was becoming a kind of high output machine, materials and labor going in, goods and services coming out. Traffic inside flowing briskly about a grid of regular city blocks. The urban maze work of London, leading into ambiguities and indeed evils, was here all rectified, orthogonal. Dickens, visiting in 1842, remarked, "After walking about in it for an hour or two, I felt that I would have given the world for a crooked street." Spiritual matters were not quite as immediate as material ones, like productivity. Sloth was no longer so much a sin against God or spiritual good as against a particular sort of time. Uniform, one way, in general not reversible, that is, against clock time, which got everybody early to bed and early to rise. Poor Richard was not shy in expressing his distaste for sloth. When he was not merely repeating well-known British proverbs on the subject, he was contributing Great Awakening style outbursts of his own. "O lazy bones, dost think God would have given thee arms and legs if he had not designed thou should use them?" Beneath the rubato of the day abided a stern pulse beating on, ineluctable, unforgiving, whereby whatever was evaded or put off now had to be made up for later, and at a higher cost of intensity. You may delay, but time will not. And sloth, being continual evasion, just kept piling up like a budget deficit, while the dimensions of the inevitable payback grew ever less merciful. In the idea of time that had begun to rule city life in Poor Richard's day, where every second was of equal length and irrevocable, not much in the course of its flow could have been called nonlinear, unless you counted the ungovernable warp of dreams, for which Poor Richard had scant use. In Francis M. Barber's 1974 concordance of the sayings, there is nothing to be found under dreams. Dreams being as unwelcome in Philly back then as their frequent companion sleep, which was considered time away from accumulating wealth, time that had to be tithed back into the order of things to purchase 20 hours of productive waking. During the Poor Richard years, Franklin, according to the autobiography, was allowing himself from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. for sleep. The other non-major work block of time was 4 hours, 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., devoted to the evening question, "What good have I done this day?" This must have been the schedule's only occasion for drifting into reverie. There would seem to have been no other room for speculations, dreams, fantasies, fiction. Life in that orthogonal machine was supposed to be non-fiction. By the time of Bartleby the Scrivener, The Story of Wall Street, 1853, acedia had lost the last of its religious reverberations and was now an offense against the economy. Right in the heart of robber baron capitalism, the title character develops what proves to be terminal acedia. It's like one of those Western tales where the desperado keeps making choices that only herd him closer to the one disagreeable finale. Bartleby just sits there in an office on Wall Street repeating, "I would prefer not to." While his options go rapidly narrowing, his employer, a man of affairs and substance, is actually brought to question the assumptions of his own life by this miserable Scrivener, this writer, who, though among the lowest of the low in the bilges of capitalism, nevertheless refuses to go on interacting any more with the daily order, thus bringing up the interesting question, who is more guilty of sloth? A person who collaborates with the root of all evil, accepting things as they are in return for a paycheck and a hassle-free life, or one who does nothing, finally, but persist in sorrow. Bartleby is the first great epic of modern sloth, presently to be followed by work from the likes of Kafka, Hemingway, Proust, Sartre, Musil, and others. Take your own favorite list of writers after Melville, and you're sure bound to sooner or later run into a character bearing a sorrow recognizable as peculiarity of our own time. In this century, we have come to think of sloth as primarily political, a failure of public will allowing the introduction of evil policies and the rise of evil regimes. The worldwide fascist ascendancy of the 1920s and 30s being perhaps sloth's finest hours, though the Vietnam era and Reagan Bush years are not far behind. Fiction and nonfiction alike are full of characters who fail to do what they should because of the effort involved. How can we not recognize our world? Occasions for choosing good present themselves in public and private for us every day, and we pass them by. Acedia is the vernacular of everyday moral life, though it's never lost its deepest notes of mortal anxiety. It never gets as painful as outright despair or as real, for it is despair bought at a discount price, a deliberate turning against faith in anything because of the inconvenience faith presents to the pursuit of quotidian lusts, angers, and the rest. The compulsive pessimist's last defense: stay still, and the blade of the scythe somehow will pass by. Sloth is our background radiation, our easy listening station. It's everywhere and no longer noticed. Any discussion of sloth in the present day is, of course, incomplete without considering television, with its gifts of paralysis, along with its creature and symbiont, the notorious couch potato. Tales spun in idleness find us tube-side, supine, chiropractic fodder, sucking it all in, reenacting in reverse the transaction between dream and revenue that brought these colored shadows here to begin with, so that we might feed uncritically, committing the other six deadly sins in parallel: eating too much, envying the celebrated, coveting merchandise, lusting after images, angry at the news, perversely proud of whatever distance we may enjoy between our couches and what appears on the television screen. Sad, but true, yet chiefly owing to the timely invention, not a minute too soon, of the remote control and VCR. Maybe there is hope after all. Television time is no longer the linear and uniform commodity that it once was. Not when you have instant channel selection, fast forward, rewind, and so forth. Video time can be reshaped at will. What may have seemed under the old dispensation like time wasted and unrecoverable is now perhaps not quite as simply structured. If sloth can be defined as the pretense in the tradition of American settlement and spoliation that time is one more non finite resource there to be exploited forever, then we may, for now at least, have found the illusion, the effect of controlling, reversing, slowing, speeding, and repeating time, even imagining that we can escape it. Sins against video time will have to be radically redefined. Is some kind of change already in the offing? A recent issue of the National Enquirer announced the winner of their contest for the King of Spuds, or top couch potato in the United States, culled from about 1,000 entries. Quote, "All I do is watch TV and work," admits the 35-year-old bachelor who keeps 3 TV sets blaring 24 hours a day at his Fridley, Minnesota home and watches a 4th set on the job. "There's nothing I like more than sitting around with a 6-pack of beer, some chips, and a remote control. The TV station even featured me on a town parade. They went into my home, got my couch, and put it on a float. I sat on the couch in my bathrobe and rode in the parade." Okay, sure, but is it sloth? The 4th television set at work, The fact that twice the tuber in question mentions sitting and not reclining suggests something different here. Channel surfing and VCR jockeying may require a more nonlinear awareness than may be entirely compatible with the venerable sin of sloth. Some inner alertness or tension, as of someone sitting in a yoga posture or in Zen meditation. Is sloth once more about to be somehow transcended? Another possibility, of course, is that we have not passed beyond acedia at all, but that it has only retreated from its long familiar venue, television, and is seeking other, more shadowy environments. Who knows? Computer games, cult religions, obscure trading floors in faraway cities, ready to pop up again in some new form to offer us cosmic despair on the cheap. Unless the state of our souls becomes once more a subject of serious concern, there is little question that sloth will continue to evolve away from its origins in the long ago age of faith and miracle, when daily life really was the Holy Ghost visibly at work, and time was a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Belief was intense, engagement deep and fatal. The Christian God was near, felt. Sloth, defiant sorrow in the face of God's good intentions, was a deadly sin. Perhaps the future of sloth will lie in sinning against what now seems increasingly to define us, technology. Persisting in luddite sorrow, despite technology's good intentions, there we'll sit with our heads in virtual reality, glumly refusing to be absorbed in its idle, disposable fantasies, even those about superheroes of sloth, back in sloth's good old days, full of leisurely but lethal misadventures with the ruthless villains of the Acedia Squad.